Assalamu alaikum. Good day. We, we are meeting after such a long time and I'm missing you all. Today we will start the lecture 1 on the among the online lecture series. In first week we will cover 3 topics. One is the Gupta gold, the second is rise of South, and the third is the last emperor. So I hope you can still recall the Gloria Maurya, and after that Guptas came to rule India. And I'm sure you realize that for your ease and for your comfort, these lectures are really condensed. So those of you who have your reading packages with you can always supplement it through that, and that should suffice. I pray that all of you are safe and your families are safe and healthy. Please take good care of yourself. Do not show any laxity in all the precautions that you can take. Let's begin. Gupta gold, this period is circa 300 to 500 AD. It's very interesting that the last Mauryan king, Rudradaman, was the one who worked hard for Mauryan Empire, and he was a Chandragupta Maurya's one of the governors. And this governor was extremely talented, and he had many merits to his credit. The first was that he was the one who started a double cropping and handsome yields from their harvests. So at that point of time, this really added to their good economy. And Rudradaman had done all this without oppressing the people. That is one great quality of any ruler, that not a single one in his rule or in her rule feels oppressed. And he extended the empire also. And he was the one that who thought that good governance does not really mean to be a king. A good governor could deliver all that is what needed to. He was a warrior, he was a victor, and the Junagadh inscriptions of Ashoka do tell us that he was a good imitator of Ashoka, and he staunchly upheld the dharma, and he aspired to be an ideal Indian king. He succeeded so well that thereafter his name, unlike anyone else, was repeated by the venerable, and it was another Veda demanding assiduous study. So it means that this man had a sense of justice, a sense of responsibility, and also he knew that the nations, sorry to use the word the nation, the societies always rise up because of their intellectual powers. He himself wrote both prose and verse, and were very clear, agreeable, sweet, charming, and beautifully excelling in the proper use of words and adorned. So not only the scholarship was developing, rather the classical Indian literature, art and science was now dawning. This was the beginning of the intellectual abilities of Indian people and of Indian rulers. The best thing that promises to express all the intellect is a good language. Sanskrit developed in this period and helped in spreading the intellectual efforts of Rudradaman, first who was a satrap, a provincial governor, and then later he became the Gupta king. One thing, very interesting thing I should mention here, that the Mauryan first king was also Chandragupta, and Chandragupta period's first king was also Chandragupta. So maybe the name had a good sign for their tenures as king. He really made profound changes, and it was basically a new impetus to Aryanizing the primacy of both the Brahmins and the language. And also in this period, feudalism got introduced because of the land ownership. The use of language, as I mentioned earlier, was a method followed to endear a ruler who was not of the origin but was considered as a foreigner. And this foreigner king really gave a status of prestige to Sanskrit. The Aryanization was basically in two ways. It was a process, two-way process, and that really benefited the emerging great Hindu tradition. It is known as great tradition of Hinduism, to be very specific. And they were borrowing good things from far-flung areas of the subcontinent. Customs and innovation was quite natural as banking on the Indo-Aryan orthodoxies. So they were developing a society on an intellectual level, on a governance level, and especially the idea of dharma, which comes to them from Ashoka. The Sanskrit was very actively promoted. I am emphasizing this point of language because Sanskrit is one of the oldest and established languages of the world, and the all Indo-European languages have taken their roots from Sanskrit and based upon it. So the Chandragupta I, and after him also came the other Gupta rulers, but he was mentioned by one Chinese monks who came to the holy land of Buddha, Fan Hien, and he said that Chandragupta I was the founder of the Gupta dynasty. So we get this assurance not only from Indian sources but from the writings of those pupils of Buddha who were coming to India and writing about it. His kingdom was up to Nepal, and his wife was from Lachavis who were ruling Nepal then. And he gained, I think, prestige of marrying this queen, and it was the first time that on the coins both king and queen's names were mentioned. The Gupta period is very much influenced by Ashoka and its pillars, especially the Allahabad pillars, known as the best of the Ashokan pillars, were praised, were regarded with respect, and they made their own additions into that. The Allahabad fort was rebuilt by Mughal Akbar in the late 16th century, and then Akbar's son Jahangir also made some inscriptions on that Allahabad rock, as it is known. And pillar inscription is the gift of Ashoka, which Guptas carried on. The question then it becomes that how these rocks and these additions to this Ashokan rock are so important, because they were basically like the written, if you may call, constitution of life, not a political constitution, but a political, more of a governance, religion and intellect. Three things were very especially famous and obvious in Gupta period. Gupta, even in modern India, when they found Gupta, so the Gupta did not get the revival because of nationalism. Rather, the nationalism found a prestige in Gupta and his mentions. Mauryan kings were only known as Rajas. It is the Guptas who came to be known as Maharaja Dhirajas, king of the kings, because of their quality and because the expansion of their control over India. The status of this extensive rulership, it includes sustained government. This king of kings had some tributary rajas also, and they were essential to have for validating and magnifying the state's work. It is clear that the Gupta Empire was now climbed to its very ambiguous zenith. And there were, however, naturally there were some setbacks and compromises. The Ramagupta, Samudragupta, who came later, and then comes Chandragupta II, he was issuing silver coins to replace those of the satraps. So thus they secured the frontiers and inherited whatever was the remains of the cultural tradition established by the Sanskrit-loving Rudra Daman, as I talked about it in earlier. Maharaja Dhiraja was such a big title that the later kings found it difficult to keep the same level of work and governance at that level. The pillars were a great source of direction to them, but those pillars did not match completely the need of the times. And so these Gupta dynasty kings in the later one of Kumaragupta, he could not really continue with the Huns, and temporarily he repulsed the Huns. Following excuse me, following the inscriptions of Ashoka and Rudra Daman, the third inscription on the rock tells us that Sikandargupta was the governor in Gujarat when Rudra Daman's reservoir was in its turn overwhelmed by flood waters, and they also added a temple. But the temple, if it meant to guarantee the dam's future security, it failed. But this is how, when we get very emotionally attached to religion and lose the sight of rationality, this happens. The golden reputation of Gupta period as wonderful administrator, expanding the territories, having a very good governance system in place, and then uplifting the society in an intellectual way while maintaining religion as a guide, was a great mark in the history of the subcontinent.